Aliens. Aliens are pretty cool, but something about how they're depicted in sci-fi bothers me. Is the fact that they're way too similar to humans. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's fine if you like humanoid aliens. It can be done well and be interesting. But usually I just find it really boring and uninspired. I mean, even just playing with their proportions a bit helps a lot. That's basically what Halo does. Though it still has the trope of them all being bipedal humanoids. This prevalence of humanoid aliens has led to a misconception that aliens need to be human-shaped, to the point where one of the most popular depictions of aliens is just a little gray man. No, what I want is real aliens, like the stuff Alex Reese or Wayne Barlow make. Now this misconception shaped how I originally designed my aliens, the Ahnāwi. In this video, I'll tell you about how I designed them, my thought process throughout the years, and also about my slow descent into madness. Because there are 23 different designs. Why was I so dedicated? I don't know, but I'm glad I stuck with it. When I made my first design, they weren't even part of a setting. They were a homebrew race for a D&D game I was playing. Now it all started with my D&D character, Ilios. Very humanoid, I know, but at the time I hadn't really come across the concept of Spec Evo yet, so I didn't really think about their origins and how they might have evolved on their planet. I just kinda took a lot of inspiration from alien designs I saw on the internet. And since a lot of alien designs are just bipedal humanoids, I made a bipedal humanoid. Now back then, they were inspired by insects and took a lot of inspiration from Avatar. Mainly that red split joint monkey we see for a second. I was also kinda inspired by the dancer of the Boreal Valley. I loved it looking thin and lanky, yet powerful and graceful. So I wanted to try and emulate that in my design. While I still did land on the humanoid body plan, I still wanted to try and mix things up a bit with the arms and legs. Now in my second design, I actually started to think about their origins. Now originally, their homeworld was a hothouse, with it mainly being a desert with forests at the coastlines. I also started to take inspiration from nature, mainly how some animals have display structures. I also got rid of their weird double forearm thing and just gave them 2 pairs of arms instead. There's this one design I made where their feathers were instead crystals, and they had a gelatinous membrane over their entire body. This was all because I saw this one really cool artwork by Tarrant Fiddler with something similar, so I just copied it. Now, I don't know why or where I got the idea from, but I decided to make them into plant people. This led their heads to become 100% plumage. This became a feature of them for quite a while. Now I know what you're asking. Stal, if they're plants, why do they have boobs? Don't question it. Now with this change to plants, I also decided to change their homeworld. It became a totally locked eyeball world. Now I really liked the white coloring of their previous design, so I kept with it for a bit. Kinda justified it as camouflage for their snowy environment. Now, I stayed with this body plan for a while, but something about the forearms just didn't really feel right to me, so I ditched them. The design felt so much less cluttered as a result. Now here's where I have another brain blast. What if I made them bioluminescent? And that's exactly what I did here. I also actually thought about their pigmentation. I made them black rather than green like Earth's foliage because they orbited a red dwarf. So they need to be able to absorb as much energy as possible. So before they had a beak, but I replaced it with a slime face that acted as their mouth. In this next design, I really played with the proportions more, making more obvious leaves and going further into the bioluminescence thing. This design was also really inspired by the Minecraft Warden, since it was just being teased at the time. I mean, come on, I even copied its color scheme for one of the designs. But I still wasn't happy with them. I kinda felt trapped just making slight tweaks and variations of the same basic design. So one day, while just mindlessly sketching, I came up with this thing. Honestly quite liked it, and still do to an extent. Give them an extra joint in their limbs, which helped them look more alien, and did away with a plume, which also helped with me drawing them, since I had a lot of trouble trying to imagine what the back of their heads looked like before. I also started to play around with the idea of them having a robot form, which will be relevant later. Now, originally, it was supposed to be how they looked like in the far future, where they had to combine into a single AI consciousness to fight back an extra-dimensional threat. But I've since changed that. In this one, you could see where my designs were going. At this point, I started to really get into Spec Evo, so I wanted to try and make them less humanoid. I did that by just strapping on another leg to make them into tripods. Didn't really like it, so I just went back to that two-legged stance. In subsequent designs, I really tried to get rid of the human features they had, mainly their torso. I think I accomplished it with this design, but I ended up not really knowing how they articulate. Honestly, I wouldn't be totally against sticking with this design. It's a solid humanoid design while not really sticking to human anatomy too much. Here is also the point where I revert them back to being normal animals. I couldn't really make a good evolutionary excuse for plants to just start walking around and turning sapient. Instead, they're animals with photosynthetic skin, with it originally being a symbiotic moss coating that over time just became part of their anatomy. At some point in its history, their planet got flung further out system, leading those that had moss coatings to survive the mass extinction, as it helped during the food scarcity. They eventually filled out the niches left behind and became the dominant land life. Now, that doesn't mean that their planet is a barren wasteland now with just a few animal species like in the Arctic. They actually have forests that rival Earth's in both size and biodiversity. This is due to plants developing a sort of antifreeze that has not survived the colder climate. Now, this is where the tripods finally return. Kinda made them work here, so I just went ahead and refined it. Saw an animation of tripods walking, and that's what mainly inspired me to try the tripod thing again. Here I also decided to make it so that they genetically modified themselves. Exiled from their homeworld after the Great Betrayal, they were forced to live in space, and eventually modified themselves to live in it better. Namely having their feet turned into hands and being radiation resistant. This is due to them not really finding any habitable planets in the system they landed in. Them being trapped, they had to live on the spaceship that they brought with them, as well as build new space habitat instead. I also made their entire skin black, so that their entire body could photosynthesize. Since before, there were parts that didn't have that photosynthetic skin, those purple parts in the old designs, which didn't make much sense. I was really happy with this design for a while. Of course, until I wasn't. I wanted to make them less human looking, yet I was still chained to their old humanoid designs. Clearly, slapping a humanoid torso onto a tripod wouldn't work, so I decided to just try designing them from the ground up again. Actually design something that would evolve from the tripedal common ancestor. And here's what I came up with. Inspired by dragons with how some of them had their necks curled up like that. Still a bit odd, just looking like a weird centaur with a leg missing and their legs being way too thin and a bit stubby. So I tried again. And after nearly 5 years and 22 different designs, this is what they finally end up looking like. Gave them a proboscis instead of normal limbs to manipulate objects. Took more inspiration from Serena and CM Cosmos Naya this time, though with the former in more ways than one. Give them a proboscis instead of normal limbs to manipulate objects. It also acts as their mouth and reproductive organs. Now I played with the idea of them being able to change sexes in the past, but now I made it so that they only have a single sex, with individuals having both male and female reproductive organs. In lore, they wrestle to decide who gets to be the quote-unquote male and female. This also kinda makes interspecies relationships kinda interesting. Now, they communicate in a low rumble, the language consisting of a lot of vowels. Now, I made a conlang for them a while back, but I lost the file, so I can't really give any examples here. The only remaining word that survived is the word Ahnāwi. Now they don't really talk through sounds, they also use bioluminescence. They use it to signal emotion and even change meaning of words in some cases. This also means that they don't really emote through their faces like we do, so they can have a hard time reading us. The idea of them being robots also returns with the introduction of frames, though it would be more accurate to call them cyborgs since their brain is still organic. Think Ghost in the Shell. Now they treat frames the same way that we treat tools, changing their bodies frequently to accomplish different tasks. Now this doesn't mean that they always change their bodies if they want to do something. If it's something that will only take a short amount of time, they'll just use normal tools or vehicles. Though in those cases, they still link their bodies to the actual tools and vehicles, so they become like an extension of their own body, kinda like a proto-frame in that regard. Now this also gave me a good opportunity to design their infantry. Since the last time I drew them, they still look like this. I wanted to try and make a design language for them to try and differentiate the different fractions. So I decided to make their tech mainly blocky shapes. Now it's kind of a pain to draw them because of this, so I had to make 3D mockups for some of the designs. That's it for now. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for just listening to me ramble about my aliens. If you've enjoyed what I've made here, I have a Twitter where I post about them more. So yeah, I'm quite happy where they are now. Don't think I'll be redesigning them anytime soon. Hopefully.